We break down the KU keys to taking down Texas Tech, pulling the upset in Lubbock on today's episode of Locked On Jayhawks.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day, and thank you to everydayers catching each and every episode of the show. We are free and available anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. And on today's edition of LOJ, we are getting to the keys for Kansas to take down Texas Tech. How does KU pull off the upset? Plus, we'll get into players to watch on this episode of the show, and then we'll get into a little FanDuel Friday on LOJ. Today's episode of the show is brought to you by Mazda. Looking to drive down to the game? Take a Mazda. And like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. So KU takes on Texas Tech on Saturday down in Lubbock. And you know, for Kansas, this is a game where you are a clear underdog. I mean, this is the biggest dog you've been of the season. Even the Missouri game was closer than this one theoretically. Now, I would be curious if, like, let's say you were playing Missouri this week, and, you know, I guess it'd be different because that's part of the Missouri data point of where they're at. But basically what I'm saying is, like, if you look at certain power ratings and stuff, like, how different is Missouri and Texas Tech? Would the line be closer to 2 touchdowns if you're playing Missouri now? I don't know. Is Texas Tech, they're higher on some power ratings, not in others. I guess the rivalry aspect maybe makes that one a little bit closer. I don't know. Just kind of an interesting thought. Because here's why I bring that up, though. If you view this game from a perspective of, is the crowd, like, the crowd's going to be really good. Lubbock has a really good crowd. You can have tortillas thrown on the field and everything like that, right? But is it really going to be a tougher crowd than playing against Missouri on the road, who is the rival that hates you the most? And it's just an angry crowd that's sold out. And you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Is it going to reach that same level of intensity? Maybe it's hard to replicate that, though. And it's like, okay, then you view it from a team standpoint. It's like, okay, Missouri had a really good defensive line, and that's what Texas Tech has. Is it better than Missouri's? I kind of think it is, but like, how much better, right? Because you were still able to move the ball and score some points offensively. And knowing all of that, I get into this to say Kansas is definitely an underdog, and I think deserves to be an underdog on paper coming into this game. And it's going to be very difficult for Kansas to win this game. But I bring all that up to say you were close to winning that Missouri game. And I don't think going on the road into Lubbock against Texas Tech is completely a different scenario, right? It's another really good team, probably top 15 team in the country that you're playing on the road. Now, you had to have some things go your way against Missouri for that to be the case, just like you're going to need some things to go your way against Texas Tech for it to be the case. And you still wound up losing that game. But point being, I think Kansas can at least, compete in this game. Does it mean you're going to win? I don't know. That's going to be a tall task. But right now, Kansas 2-touchdown dog. And if I'm being honest, we'll get to FanDuel Friday. Like, I'm kind of leaning toward Kansas with the points, but doesn't necessarily mean they win. So how does Kansas cover? I think the offense has to score a lot, like point blank. Like, I look at Texas Tech and they can really throw the ball around the yard. Whether it's Behren, it doesn't matter which quarterback's in there, right? They're going to be able to throw the football. They've got a bunch of really good receivers. They hit explosive passing plays. And with some of the deficiencies we've seen at times from the KU secondary and the KU defense, that is a worry for me that Texas Tech is going to score 40, 50 points. And so for then you to hang in this game, you're going to have to score high 20s, 30, 40 points yourself. Now, this might be an old-fashioned Big 12 game in a lot of ways. Problem is the Texas Tech defense has not allowed anybody to get close to scoring that many points, and that's where you run into a bit of an issue. So if the offense could find a way to score on the Texas Tech defense, which again hasn't really been a thing so far this season, like if you look at the 5-0 start for Texas Tech, let's see, 7, 14, 14, 10, and 11. So they've yet to give up more than 14 points in total on the season. They've given up If my math's right there, that would be, 56 points over 5 games. Are you really going to all of a sudden score 38 again? I don't know. The Kansas offense, probably the best offense that Texas Tech has played so far this season. So maybe it's entirely possible. You never know. But the offense, if they can score a lot, which that's kind of a vague term, I think you can at least hang with them, right? And I think this one goes into that, but you have to be able to protect Jalon Daniels. If you protect Jalon Daniels, it's going to give you a better shot to score some points. That's going to be the biggest difficulty here, because when you look at Texas Tech, that defensive line is gnarly, man. It's 2 elite defensive ends. It's 2 elite defensive tackles. Like, legitimately, all 4 of those guys are probably going to get some sort of all Big 12 awards. I don't know that all 4 of them will be all Big 12 first team, just from a standpoint of sometimes people, don't want to vote that way. But like, realistically, they could be deserving of that being the case. So the Kansas offensive line is going to have their hands full. Now, like we said, Kansas played a really good defensive line in Missouri, and that'll help you prepare you for this game. It wasn't KU's best game as an offensive line against Missouri, though. And, I don't know, maybe you could argue that Damon Wilson, I don't know, David Haley's been very good. So it's like, I think the Tech one is slightly better than the Missouri one, but I think both units are top 10 defensive line units in the country. So how can you perform there? If you can keep Jalon Daniels upright, I think you can at least score a little bit of points to, try to keep in there. And then the last part here is, can the defense be at least bend but don't break if you want to cover, and maybe force a few turnovers? Tech has had a propensity, as we talked about in the preview yesterday. They've had a good amount of field goals in the red zone. Can you keep it going that way, right? If they have 5 red zone trips, can you force at least 2 field goals? Can you force maybe 3 field goals? That would be huge for you. And then can you force a couple turnovers in this game? Interceptions, maybe a strip sack, maybe, special teams turnover or something. That would go a long way in KU covering the spread. Now, for me, to take that leap into how does KU win the game in Lubbock, I think you do have to win the turnover battle. Like that, I don't really see a scenario where you're -1 in turnovers and you come out on top of this game. I think you need to win the turnover battle, and it has to be an impactful turnover. It can't just be, we forced a turnover and then didn't score on it. It has to be like, you got a pick 6, or, you got a turnover and then you took advantage and had a 6-minute drive afterwards that led to a touchdown, like a big play, right? Again, hold Tech to some field goals in the red zone. This one's interesting. So the most rushing yards that Texas Tech has given up this season is 103. They've only allowed 100 or more twice. It's 103 and 102, so it's not very much. Just to give it like a random figure, can Kansas be around at least like 150? I think, put it this way, Kansas is going to have to rush for more yards on Texas Tech than any team has rushed for on Texas Tech so far this season, just from a standpoint of allowing the defense to rest and kind of keeping them off the field a little bit here or there. They're going to have to, I'm not saying this has to be, 300 yards rushing, but they have to find a little bit more success than other teams have had there. And then Jalon has to have a baller game. Like, I don't know that, statistically, I don't think this is a game where you're going to be walking away because of how good the Tech defense is, saying that's the best statistic game of Jalon Daniels' career, right? You think back to the Liberty Bowl, the Cincinnati game a couple weeks ago, just statistically, some of Jalon's best games in a Kansas uniform. You could throw for 260 in this game, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, 50 rushing yards. That would almost be like the best game, depending on how it's going in the game script and, what key third downs and key plays you're making. You'll be able to come away from this, if that is the case. Like, you want to be able to come away saying, yeah, that was the best game of Jalon Daniels' career. That was one of the best games against Jalon Daniels' career, even though statistically he's had more yards or touchdowns, just from a standpoint of managing the game, making the winning plays, playing an unbelievable defense. He made the winning plays for KU. If you walk away from the game saying that, I think that gives Kansas a chance to win as well, as long as they can do those other things also. All right, let's continue on with our players to watch for Kansas and Texas Tech. This is Locked on Jayhawks. Today's episode of LOJ is brought to you by DoorDash. It is almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For Kansas, we're going to go with Austin Alexander, delivered in a big way. UCF was driving late in the game, trying to, get that game tying touchdown. Who knows? Maybe they would have gone for 2. I think it was on 3rd and 10. They throw to the end zone on like a post route. Austin Alexander plays it perfectly, gets the back arm in front, pass breakup, And from there, Kansas makes the fourth down stop. He is just a redshirt freshman. He's had some ups and downs so far this season, but you can see the talent, the potential that he has. He's going to be a really good player for KU, and he made a really good and really big play on that one for KU, certainly delivering last Saturday. Well, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays, just like Austin Alexander for Kansas. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday order. Stack it up all season. You can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. We're going to do our FanDuel Friday later on in the episode, and we'll give you some interesting ones. This is one of the few ones where actually like some of the touchdown bets are pretty interesting for Kansas. So we'll get into a little bit of that on our FanDuel Friday coming up later in the episode. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. Give us a follow at LO_Jayhawks on our profile account. Okay, players to watch for this one. We'll start with the Kansas Jayhawks. We'll start with the Kansas Jayhawks offense. We're going to start with Jalon Daniels. We just talked about how, he needs to have just like a mega game for KU to come out on top of this one. Right now, Jalon is 8th in the country in EPA per dropback, 7th among Power 4 quarterbacks. So far this season, 67% on his completion rate with 1,500 yards, 9.8 yards per attempt. That's an incredible number. 16 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That's also incredible. Then if you add in the 1 rushing touchdown, just gets even a little bit better. And his total QBR is 78.2, which is 21st in the country. He's also got 239 rushing yards, 4.8 yards per carry. He's been electric so far this season, and they're going to need him again. Doesn't necessarily have to be statistically, but he needs to have one of the best games in his Kansas career if they want to, compete and try to pull off an upset on the road against a very good Texas Tech defense in a tough place to play. Our next guy we're going to get to is Calvin Clements. Clements overall on Pro Football Focus has just a 53 grade on PFF right now, but he's coming off his 2 best pass blocking games. He's had some lower ranking pass blocking games. He's been, decent in the run blocking game, but the last 2 weeks he's turning a corner. He's had his 2 best pass blocking games by Pro Football Focus grade. And for a younger player getting more experience, I don't think that is just something that you look to and say, oh, he's just had 2 good weeks. I think that is him turning the corner. And I've always thought that Calvin Clements was going to be a really good player for KU. I've continued to make kind of the Bryson Cabledew comparison that, Cabledew had to take some of his lumps early in his career, played through it, and then eventually his last 2 years was a stud at Kansas. I think you're going to see that with Calvin Clements, and you might be seeing him turning that corner right now, but this is not an easy game to continue turning the corner. If he can do it in this game, I mean, that would be big time if he can, but he's got his hands full. David Bailey on one side. I don't know if Bailey will be the guy that's always going up against the left tackle here. They've also got another good defensive end on the other side. I mean, both their defensive ends are 2 of the best in the country. So from that standpoint, I don't know which one's going to be going up against him, but either way, he plays a very important role for Kansas to keep Jalon Daniels, upright. And then Le'Shawn Williams is our last pick here. Le'Shawn is coming off a couple very efficient games. Overall, he's averaging over 6 yards per carry this year, but only 50 carries so far this season. But 10 carries for 64 against Cincinnati, 12 for 58 against UCF. So last 2 weeks without Daniel Hishaw, that's 22 carries for 122 yards. I think he should be getting even more carries. And I think in a game like this, theoretically, you'd be cool with him taking 20 carries if it keeps the ball on your side of the field. The problem is Texas Tech's run defense, again, they've only given up a max of 103 yards. So there comes a certain point where it's like, okay, you can't keep running the ball if you're picking up a yard every time. That's not what I'm saying. But if you can find a way to have some success, grind out some 3, 4, 5 yard runs here and there, I think that is something that would make a little bit of sense, and he plays a huge role. Can he have more rushing yards than any running back has had against Tech so far this season? All right, what about the KU defensive side of the ball? We're going to start with Blake Herold. Herold has a 66.4 PFF grade this season, which is solid, but that's also misleading. He had just a 25 grade in the Wagner game, which First of all, that just seems not right, but I digress. If you take that game out, every other game he's been a 68 or higher. He's had highs of 77.3 and 72. So realistically, you're looking at him being closer to a 70. He's got 9 pressures this season. That already matches what he had all of last year. He has 8 of them coming in the last 3 weeks. He's playing really well coming into this one. And when you look at Texas Tech's lowest rated offensive lineman on Pro Football Focus, it's their left guard. So I think that's something where, if Kansas is able to have a good defensive game, if they are able to blow up the Texas Tech offense a little bit here and there, it could be from those good defensive tackles, including Blake Herold against the interior of that Tech offensive line. Jalon Daniels, he played a ton last week, 33 snaps at the safety spot. He had just 49 total snaps coming in, so nearly doubled that in just the one game. Devin Dye had an injury in that game. Taylor Davis at one point went down with an injury. We know the KU safety position has been beat up so far this season. And Dye played well against UCF. He had a near 70 PFF grade. He had that key strip sack. Does he play even more this week? Can he continue to be a game changer and make those big plays? I look at a guy like Jalon Daniels. And then we're going to go with Austin Alexander. 67.6 PFF grade and 76.6 coverage grades last week. Those were both his bests of the season. Was that a good game, or was that him turning the corner a little bit? Again, very talented player. It comes after arguably his worst game. He was targeted 9 times and gave up a bunch of catches and yards against Cincinnati. So was that kind of a wake-up call? And I don't know, was he turning the corner against UCF? We're going to find out against Tech, because they're going to go after him, because they have a lot of good receivers. They'll go after different guys. He's going to be tested, and if he can have a big game, it'll be very helpful for the KU defense against a very good passing offense in Texas Tech. Our players to watch on the Texas Tech side of the ball, we're going to go to their offense. Baron Morton is the first, 69% completion rate, 10.1 yards per attempt with 12 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. He can run he hasn't really done it so far this season, like not many rushing stats, but I've seen it before in past games, past seasons, where if he has to run, he will and is more than capable of it. I think he's probably trying to a little less this year. He had the injury early in the season, so probably trying to avoid another injury, and maybe that's just making it a little harder to run the football. But he can if he needs to, at least, again, historically, that's what it's shown. Not as much this year, but he's a good quarterback. And he's somebody who, came into Lawrence and won that game on earning a last-second drive against KU. Can KU find a way to slow him down? One of the guys he's going to be thrown to, Terrence Carter. He is a tight end, 20 catches, 270 yards, 4 touchdowns, transfer from Louisiana. He has an 84 PFF grade, 83 in run blocking. So he's a good run blocking tight end. Who covers him for KU? We've talked about some of the injuries, the safety spot. KU has athletic linebackers. Maybe that's the solution here. But that'll be a very interesting matchup both ways. And then Caleb Douglas. I mean, you could pick a lot of different receivers for Texas Tech. Douglas, though, is, I guess you'd call him the big play guy. 18 catches, 340 yards, 1 touchdown. That's 19 yards per catch. He had a big week last week, 7 for 114. He's a big receiver, 6'4". Who guards him on the outside? Maybe that is Austin Alexander who gets that call, and that'll be tough to try to take him down along with a lot of the Tech receivers. On the defensive side of the ball for Texas Tech, I could have just picked all their defensive linemen. We're going to start with David Bailey, 5.5 sacks, 31 pressures. That is insane. So KU's top 2 in pressures are Leroy Harris and Trey Lathan. They have a combined 25 pressures. David Bailey has 31 himself. He had 11 last week alone. Now, when he was going up against a better offensive tackle, Utah has like 2 potential first-round picks to tackle. He had a 62 PFF grade, so they were able to make him a little more pedestrian in that game. But again, that's 2 first-round picks to tackle. I don't know that Kansas has a first-round pick at tackle. But I guess point being, if you look at their schedule, it's interesting. They've either played like really good or really bad. Utah might be the best tackles in the country, and they played them. But then Houston's top offensive tackle has a 55 PFF grade. Oregon State's tackles, like Oregon State's not very good this year. So it's almost like this will be a middle ground game for as far as the tackle talent that they're playing. And we've seen them play the best and the worst. So how is that going to go against this one? We do know David Bailey is a very, very good player, but is he going to completely take over the game, or is there just going to be a few pressures and then Kansas is able to work around it? That'll be a big question. Jacob Rodriguez, 33 tackles, 3 pass deflections, 2 interceptions this year. He was the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year in the preseason, over 100 tackles, 82 PFF grade in 2024. And he is shattering that number this year. 92 PFF grade right now with a 90 in coverage. So he's not even being taken advantage of in the passing game. Might be tough for the KU backers and tight ends and stuff like that. Or the KU tight ends and running backs in this one against Rodriguez. And then Lee Hunter. Again, could have picked a lot of defensive linemen for Tech. So when Bailey is the top pass rusher, I would say Hunter is the best run stopper, which makes for an unreal duo with Rodriguez. But again, it's all those guys. But Hunter has an 84 PFF grade. He's a 90 in run defense. He also has 7 pressures, and he's yet to miss a tackle. So when he gets a hand on you, you're going down. Our player matchups: Texas Tech right tackle Jacob Pontone versus KU defensive end Justice Finkley. Pontone is Tech's highest rated offensive lineman, 74.2 PFF grade. If Kansas has any chance in this one, their defensive line is going to have to win. Finkley is on a tear. He's coming off a couple of his best games of the year. He has 71.4 PFF grade, former Texas Longhorn, coming into town in Texas. He needs to have a big one for KU. Texas Tech's defensive tackles, Hunter, who we just mentioned, and then Gil Howard is their other one, versus the interior offensive line for KU of Herring, Foster, and Baines. Can KU get any push in the running game? Those are 2 stud defensive tackles. Nobody's been able to make a push against them so far. And as good as those offensive tackles are for Utah on the outside, I don't know how good the interior of the Utah offensive line is. And maybe that's something, can Kansas give Tech a different look than they've had so far this season? I don't know. And then we'll give a bonus one. Coy Eakin, the Texas Tech receiver, versus Jalen Todd. Todd moved to the slot last week, did well. Part of that was out of necessity with injury and stuff, but Eakin's a really good receiver who plays a lot in the slot. I would like that to stay the matchup where Todd's in the slot to try to, slow him down a little bit. Let's get to our FanDuel Friday to finish up. This is Locked on Jayhawks. This episode of LOJ is brought to you by Mazda, moving the game forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There's moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward is when they got the goal line stand on 4th and goal. I mean, you could really pick all the 3 plays leading up, because the goal line stand is more than just the 4th down play. You got to get it to 4th down, right? But it's the run stuffs. And then eventually you have Fancher take off on the run on the 4th and goal, and you squeeze him down, and he's just a hair short, and it's elation. And then Kansas had to punt, and they had to make another stop. But it all started there. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Thanks for joining us on this episode of Locked on Jayhawks. Let's get to our FanDuel Friday on today's episode of the show. So KU, at least at time of recording, is 14.5-point dogs. Here's some stats for you for KU coming in. So this is since 2022 for Lance Leipold. This is very interesting. So between 2022 to 2024, Lance Leipold and KU 11-7 against the spread, so solid there after a win, which they're coming off of. However, this year, they're 0-3 against the spread coming off a win. They're coming off a win in this one. So is that something where it's like, hey, they just haven't been able to perform this year off a win? That's bad for this game. Or is that something where it's like, no, typically KU and Lance Leipold have done well off of a win. And the fact that they're doing poorly this year, maybe that's a reversion to the mean thing, and Kansas is due for a covered spread after a win this year, right? They're also 7-2 against the spread since 2022 against a ranked opponent. So that's obviously a very good one for Kansas. And then they're 12-9 against the spread since 2022 on the road. So all those are Kansas. I like Kansas to cover here. I think they can keep it close. Now, I definitely am a little worried from the standpoint of, like, if that Tech defense and the defensive line wrecks KU's day, could this be a game that, again, if we see the KU defense that was against Cincinnati and Missouri, but now you're not able to run the ball against a good defense, now you're getting sacked a bunch, could this wind up 45-14? That is in the back of my head. So honestly, here's how I would be playing it. I would be playing it as Kansas play. Like I can see Kansas keeping it close. So maybe you play it as an alt line. Let's see what we can get here on FanDuel. You could play an alt line as Kansas plus 10.5 instead of plus 14.5. You get that at plus 136. Or if you want to go even crazier, it's plus 7.5 at plus 176. And then you can also bet it if you want, as like just in case it goes the other way here. You can get Texas Tech minus, I don't know, what did I say, 45-14. So that'd be like minus 30.5. You can get that at plus 400. So like maybe you kind of cover your bases both ways there. I don't know. Does that even make sense mathematically? Regardless. Some other things on FanDuel. Oh, I should also mention the over-unders 58.5. I like I said earlier, I don't know how I feel about totals with this team right now. If Kansas defense is going to be the one we saw against Cincinnati and against Missouri, I think you like the over here because Tech could put up 45 by themselves, and then can you just get to 14? But if it's the defense we saw in the second half against UCF, what if you hold Texas Tech a couple times in the red zone and get a couple turnovers? What if they score 34? And it's like, can you get to more than 24 points to get the over? So I don't know. I'm probably avoiding that altogether. Touchdown score props, because you're playing a really good defense now. Some of these have been juiced up. Leshon Williams is at plus 110. I don't hate that, though. Tech doesn't really give up a lot of, touchdowns in general or rushing touchdowns. Emmanuel Henderson is plus 135. Jalon Daniels on the run is plus 200. Cam Pickett at plus 240. Bowman Groen at plus 280. Keaton Kubeka at plus 330. Harry Stewart at plus 440 is jumping out to me a little bit there. But Keaton Kubeka, the ones I would really circle, Keaton Kubeka at plus 330. He's a Texas kid. Feels like he's been making some key plays the last couple of weeks. That would be one that I kind of like. And then the Jalon Daniels rushing one at plus 200. I definitely don't mind that. This feels like a game where you would unleash his running ability in the red zone a little more than you have. The passing props, Baron Morton's at 293.5. Jalon Daniels is at 236.5. If Kansas wants a chance in this one, Jalen's going to probably have to go over there. So I would probably be leaning that way there. In the receiving game, Cam Pickett 34.5. That would be one that I'm all over after what we saw he did against UCF, starting to look more healthy. I'm all over that one. So Cam Pickett definitely there at 34.5. Emmanuel Henderson was 63.5. And then some of the rushing props, Leshon Williams 55.5, Jalon Daniels 29.5. That's one I wouldn't be taking this game, because if you do get sacked 3 times, it's going to be hard to, get to that total. So just to recap, the ones that I like the best: Cam Pickett over 34.5 for the receiving yards, at least of the ones that are there right now. Jalon Daniels over 236.5 for passing yards, because I think that might just be a necessity. And then the touchdown score props, either Kubeka or Jalon rushing the ball. If you want to build just a little, higher percentage parlay necessarily, you could go with like Cam Pickett on a touchdown. You could go with Jalon Daniels alt passing yards at 200 plus. You could take, if we're just sticking with Pickett anyway, with the touchdown, you could do Pickett to have 20 plus receiving yards. And then we can do Leshon Williams to have, 30 plus rushing yards. That pays off plus 394. So you can check that out or build your own over at FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Podcast Network. That'll do it for this episode of the show. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page, where you can like and subscribe to the show. Make sure to check out all our content this week. We had a full KU Texas Tech preview on yesterday's episode. Had some more KU basketball content. Plenty coming at you here, and plenty more to come at you. So make sure you subscribe to the show. Please hit the like button as well. Certainly helps on our end of things. We'll see you next time with LOJ.